Here, today's agenda is here you are going to know about the roles and boundaries of cloud computing and then characteristics of cloud computing here. Here, what are the roles and boundaries here? Here, how can you represent these roles and boundaries of cloud computing? What are the characteristics? Here, the cloud computing different roles are there. Here, what are those roles here? One is a provider, another one is a consumer, other one is a service owner, and then administrator, resource administrator. These are all called it as a roles of cloud computing. In addition to these roles, some of the NIST defines some of the roles here, and then boundaries, organizational boundaries, and then trust boundaries. Here comes to the first important one. Here is a what is a cloud provider? The first role here is a cloud provider. The cloud, what is the main aim of cloud provider in this case? Here is a in the right side you will identify that the cloud provider always maintains a cloud. Always this cloud provider maintains a server. Here the cloud provider maintains the or manages the infrastructure as well as the platform that runs the application. Here that means you are running the application, you are running the where you are running the application on server. Here that means cloud provider always maintains the or manages the infrastructure. Here the cloud provider further tasked with any required management and administrative duties. Here you will perform the some of the administrative duties. That is the main aim of the cloud provider. In the diagram here right side you will identify the cloud provider. Here the cloud provider having some services. Here the cloud provider, that means for example for the cloud provider, Microsoft Azure is a cloud provider, and AWS is a cloud provider, and then IBM cloud provider, Google cloud provider, different cloud providers are there. That means the aim, this is a cloud provider, and then the cloud providers normally having the IT resources. You know IT resources. That means any physical or logical artifacts of a IT. Here that's called here IT resource here. Here IT resources that are made available for lease by the cloud consumer. Here consumer takes a for leasing. Here that one means the provider always maintains a server. This server for taking consumer for rent. Here that is a cloud provider. That means however some of the cloud providers here resell IT resources leased from the other cloud providers. Here some of the provider takes a IT resources for rent, and then those are all providing for the consumer. That is a one thing here, cloud consumer. The second one here is a consumer in the sense here is using the cloud services. For example, I am the consumer for the Gmail. I am using the services provided by the Google. Here the cloud consumer is a organization or human that has a formal contract with the cloud provider. Here he is having the formal contract with the cloud provider to use IT resources. The IT resources may be software based resources or hardware based resources. Here made available by the cloud providers. Here in the left side corner here you will identify the cloud service consumer. The consumer always utilizes the services provided by the cloud provider. Here always utilizes the services. Here this consumer may be a simple organization. I am taking the organization way, or the cloud consumer may be a simple person. Here the best example, Sri Vijayaniketan uses a cloud AWS. Here that's called here a simple organization. And then Uma Maheshwara, that means I am the person. I am using the some of the cloud based information. Gmail. I am using the Gmail that is provided by the Google. That means I am the consumer, human or consumer. Here cloud consumer uses a cloud service consumer. That means the service consumer to access the cloud service. That is a information. Here coming to the consumer. Here organization, the cloud consumer organization are human shown remotely accessing cloud IT resources are considered cloud consumers. Here any IT resource, that means any person uses a IT resource, that person is called as a consumer. Or any organization uses a IT resources, that organization is called as a consumer. You are coming to the service owner. Here, what is a service owner here? Service owner here he called as a the service owner may be a sometimes the consumer, sometimes provider, the cloud provider or consumer. Sometimes you will use a person. Here, the person or organization that having the cloud service is called here cloud service owner. Here, that means owns the cloud service. That person is called as a cloud service owner. The example here is in this diagram here, the consumer act as a service owner. Here, what is the thing here? The cloud service owner can be a consumer or cloud provider that owns the cloud within which the cloud service resides. Here, in this case here, in the diagram here, cloud consumer can be a cloud service owner. Here, the cloud consumer is a cloud service owner, and then when it displays its own service in a cloud, here that means it will display the own service in a particular cloud. Then the consumer here act as a owner. Here, next case here in the second diagram, the provider act as a owner. Here, how can you act as a owner here? In this case here, the cloud provider becomes a cloud service owner. Here, the cloud provider becomes a service owner. Here, in this case, here, cloud X is there. The cloud service A, that means cloud service owner, and then the provider. Here, the cloud service owner is a provider here. Here, the cloud provider becomes the cloud service owner if it deploys its own cloud service. Here is the cloud provider deploys his own service, then the consumer here called it as a owner. Here comes to the cloud resource administrator. Here, what about the resource administrator? Here also sometimes consumer and sometimes provider here. Here resource administrator is a person or organization. Here administrator is a person or organization responsible for administering the cloud-based IT resources, including cloud services also. Here he is having the administering capabilities. He is managing capabilities, managing the IT resources. Here that person is called as a, if the cloud consumer managing the resources, then he is called here. That means managing the resources in the sense he is doing some task on a system, on a application. Then he is called here administrator. Here coming to the cloud resource administrator can be a cloud consumer organization, or administrator can access the IT resources that belongs to the cloud consumer. Here that is a thing. Here coming to the administrator, the cloud resource administrator can be with the cloud provider or cloud provider organization. Here the cloud provider organization. Here what is the thing here is a provider organization for which it can administer the cloud providers internally and externally available the IT resources. Here in this case here the cloud administrator, here this provides a, that means the cloud provider accesses some using some resources here. Here that is a, this is a information. The right side diagram indicates the administrator. Here administrator can be with the cloud provider. That means the administrator can be with the consumer, administrator can be with the provider. That means he is having some capability, administering capabilities. Here coming to the another one here is some next important one here is the additional roles. Here NIST provides some additional roles. Here these roles are called as a supplementary roles here. Here the cloud computing referring this NIST in the sense cloud computing reference architecture defines three different roles here. Additional roles here: cloud auditor, one cloud broker, cloud carrier. These are all different roles which are used in a cloud computing. Here, what is an auditor here? Auditor is a third party that conduct an independent assessment. Here, what is the main role of a auditor here? He is performing the assessment of cloud environment. Assumes the role of the cloud auditor. Here, what is the role of the cloud auditor in this case here? He is performing some assessment here. The assessment may be, what is an assessment here? Is a security, is a, that means is evaluation of security. That means he is performing some responsibilities. Here the responsibility here is a evaluation of security control. Here what is the exactly security control here? Security control in the sense, here in this security control, here is a, that means it is a safeguard or countermeasure to avoid the detect and count, that means avoid, detect or minimizing the security risk. Here what is the thing here, the same in this case here, the security control is a safeguard or countermeasure, is a, the main intention of here is a minimizing the security risk. That's called here the security control. And then privacy impact. What is an exact privacy impact here? The privacy impact in this case here is a, the privacy impact assessment is a systematic assessment of a project. Here it is a systematic assessment here that identifies the impact that the project might have on a privacy of individual, or sets out recommendation for a, for managing, minimizing and elimination of the impacts. That is called here the cloud impact. And then performance. Here in this case here, the performance here is a, the performance, that means comparison, competitive information. That is a responsibility. The main responsibility called auditor here is a evaluation of security control. That means risk minimization. Here privacy impacts. Here and then the purpose here. What is the cloud auditor purpose here? That means he provides a assessment of a cloud environment. Here what is the assessment here? He is providing some assessment of the cloud environment to help the strengthen the trust relationship between a consumer and a provider. Here the main intention, why are using the cloud editor auditor here? In order to strengthen the relationship between a consumer and a provider. Here consumer provides some server, the provider, service provider provides some server, the consumer uses that server. In between a consumer and provider, there is a auditor is there. Auditor strengthen the relationship between a consumer and then server. And then cloud broker. Here broker, that means for example, so many times you will broker in the sense is a mediator between a two different things. For example, here what is the main intention of broker here is a managing the uses of IT cloud services. The managing the usage, what is the main responsibility of this broker here? Usage of cloud services between a consumer and provider. Here the main intention broker here. That means broker, broker in the sense, for example, stock market brokers are there. Similarly, cloud brokers are there. He is telling something to the consumers. Here, that means this provider, AWS provides this number of services. Here, that means you will use these services with low of cost. That means the cost of these services are like this. The cost of virtual machine is like this. And like that, he is telling some information. That is a main responsibility. And then services provided by the cloud broker includes a service intermediation and then aggregation. These are all some of the services here. Here the aggregation, that is a simple information about the role broker, the cloud carrier. Here this person responsible for wire level connection between a consumer and provider. Here providing there some communication. Here he is giving some communication between a consumer and provider. He assumes that the role of the carrier. That means the role here is assumed by the network and telecommunication providers. Here the connectivity, much connectivity, the communication connectivity, the telecommunication connectivity between a provider and consumer done by the carrier. Here that is another role here. These are all different roles. Here coming to the organizational boundary. Here, how can you represent the organization boundary in a cloud computing here? The organization boundary for the consumer, the organization boundary for the providers. Yes, the organization boundary. The organization boundary represent a perimeter. The perimeter that surrounds a set of IT resources. Here, for example, the organizational, the consumer, The consumer having the some set of IT resources are there. That means the consumer utilizing the some of the IT resources. Here, those IT resources, the IT resources may be software IT resources, hardware IT resources. The surrounding of a, that means you cannot cross the boundary of that is a consumer. The surrounding here, the surrounding of a, the surrounding set of IT resources of a consumer is called here organizational boundary of a consumer. The surrounding a set of IT resources of a provider, that means he is always maintaining the servers, is always maintaining accessing the that means processing the servers, here buying the servers. These are all surrounding information of a, that means the provider always provide a software as a service. Here Azure, if you take the Azure is a provider, he is providing the software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Here coming to the another important provider here is a Salesforce. Here it provides a software as a service and then platform as a service. That those are all boundaries. The boundaries, these services, that is a, that is the thing here. The surrounds a setup, that means the perimeter of a IT resources of a cloud consumer, that is a boundary. The perimeter of a IT resources of a provider is called here organization boundary of um, provider. Here that is a perimeter information. That means here the organization boundary here, the boundary of an actual organization, only an organizational set of IT asset and resources. Here the organizational boundary for the cloud consumer, left hand side indicates the organizational boundary for the consumer, the right hand side indicates the organizational boundary for the provider, here represented by the broken line notation. Here that is called here, that means they will not cross the boundaries of organization. Here the restriction is there, consumer boundary this one, the provider boundary this one, you cannot cross these boundaries. Here coming to the trust boundary. The trust boundary represent a perimeter. This is also a perimeter here. Here the that means there is a outside boundary is there. The boundary call it as a trust boundary. Here inside boundaries are called it as a inside you have a boundaries are there, organizational boundaries. Here inside boundaries are, that means organizational boundary for the individual, consumer boundary, and then provider boundary. But here trust boundary here is a the entire boundary, the perimeter that typically spans beyond a physical boundaries to represent the extent to which the IT resources are trusted. Here the entire boundary here, the outside boundary, the for the cloud service provider and then cloud service consumer, the entire boundary called as a trust boundary. Here that means here in this case in the trust boundary you are having the IT resources of consumer, IT resources of provider also, all information existed in a trust boundary. That is a trust boundary. In the trust boundary, when analyzing cloud environment, the trust boundary is a most associated with the trust issued by an organization acting as a cloud consumer. Here that is a information, the entire boundary, the outside boundary here in this case here is a trust boundary. Here coming to the characteristics of a cloud computing, you have a 6 different characteristics for the cloud uh, computing. Here the cloud characteristics here, what are the cloud characteristics here? On demand, on demand, and in the sense you required you will use that information. I require this information, I can use this information, and then I will pay money for that only. That is called here on demand. And then ubiquitous, here that means wide range. Here in the cloud here you will use a one server, two server, that means n number of servers required. Here another important thing here, multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy in the sense I can explain clearly about the what is the single tenancy and then multi-tenancy, the consumers. Here the tendency in the sense customers, let us assume. Here multi, well I can explain clearly. And then resource pooling, that is called here. Here and then elasticity. Elasticity in the sense That means elasticity, rubber. That means measuring. Yeah, measured usage, another one. And then resiliency. Resiliency depends upon a component, different component here, replicated components, those components. It's a depends upon a the replicated component. This is called here NIST is excluded. Here, one thing here is a on-demand usage. What is an on-demand usage here? Here, the cloud consumer can access the cloud-based IT resources as needed basis. Here, what is an as needed basis? Is a here for an organization, for example, Infosys uses a some of the cloud servers. 10 servers required. Only you use 10 servers. You cannot use the remaining. Even though for that case here, you have a number of servers. That means among them, I can use only limited servers. Limited servers in the sense, yes, I need it. I need these servers. I can use this one. I need, that means I am using these servers for the 1 hour or 2 hours. I can pay money for the 2 hours only. Here that is called here on-demand usage. Here on-demand computing is a business computing model. Here it is a business computing model in which the computing resources are made available to the user on an as needed basis. That means that is called here on-demand usage. That is provided by the cloud. Here in the cloud, that type of facility also available. Here coming to the ubiquitous access here, wide access. Here ubiquitous access in the sense wide access here. Here the ubiquitous access represented the ability for the cloud service to be widely accessible. You can access any number of servers. Here establishing the ubiquitous access for the cloud service can be require a support for the range of devices. Here and then that means n range of devices, 2 devices, 3 devices, not a 2 3, n number of devices. Here you will have some transport protocols. Here the application layer protocols, transport layer protocols, like that different architecture consists of different protocols. Here in that protocols here is a that's about having the the services can require, the cloud services can require support for range of this transport layer, the transport protocol interfaces. Here some of the interfaces for the these number of protocols here. And then security technologies, some of the security technologies here that means security technology in the sense, some unauthorized person can access our data. I can only authorize a person, I can access only my data. Here that means our data not it, that means it is a thing, that is a security. We have different technologies for their security technologies. Here that also supports. Here that is ubiquitous wide access. Here multi-tenancy. What is a multi-tenancy here? The multi-tenancy means multiple customers of cloud vendors are using the same computing resources. Here what that is a multi-tenancy. Here what is the exact meaning of multi-tenancy? Multiple customers, the multiple customers of vendors. Here using a vendor, the providers. Here the multiple customers, for example, AWS. AWS is a one provider. The AWS used by the AWS services used by the our SV University, and then Sri Vijayaniketan University, Sri Vijayaniketan organization, SV University, and then some other organization uses the AWS services. Here what is the exact thing here is a these multiple organization, Sri Vijayaniketan, SV University, exactly uses only one server. That's called here multi-tenancy. Here the multi-tenancy means the multiple customers of cloud vendors are using the same computing resource. Here that is called here multi-tenancy. For example, what is a single tenancy here? The single tenancy in the sense each cloud customer has a separate IT resource or separate IT instance. Here for example, cloud A, let us assume Sri Vijayaniketan. Here Sri Vijayaniketan uses a cloud service provided by the the service of A, and then the storage here is the storage device is A. That means the single tenancy, this one. Here the cloud A provides some services. You just say this person. Here coming to the cloud consumer B, the consumer B uses another cloud storage B, that is called here single tenancy. The single tenant environment, each cloud consumer has a separate resource instance. That is a single tenancy. Here multi-tenancy. What is a multi-tenancy here? If you see the diagram here, the cloud service consumer A uses a services of the cloud A, and then uses a shared storage, the same storage device. Like Sri Vijay Niketan uses a same storage device, and then SU University also uses the same storage device for processing data, for storing data, for accessing the data. Here for accessing this data here, same storage device in a cloud. Here that is called here multi-tenancy. Here nowadays all cloud computing, all computing providers so uses the same strategy, multi-tenancy. Here in the multi-tenancy, the single instance of an IT resource such as cloud storage device serves multi customers. Here one device, one storage device used for the different customers. Here that's called here multi-tenancy. That is done in a cloud platform. Here other one is a elasticity. Yeah, that means automatically scaling. Here for example, I am the person now. I started a one startup company. Here the I am having the limited number of limited number of servers and the limited number of customers. Here the next 1 year, the company extended. Here that means for that one, what should I do here? I need to increase the servers. That means the scaling. Here you have to scale the automatically scaling the IT resources or IT services. That means you will scale the IT services. That is called here elasticity. Elasticity, in the elasticity, the scaling out, scaling down, scaling up, scaling down, scaling out and scaling in. Here that's called here vertical scaling, and then you will perform the horizontal scaling. Here elasticity is considered as a core justification for the adoption of a cloud computing. This is a core justification. That means this type of facility also available in a cloud. That means automatically scaling facility available. Here coming to the measured usage. The measured usage in the sense here ability of cloud platform to keep track of the usage of IT resources. Here that keep track. Here that means the primarily by the cloud consumer. The cloud consumer keep track of the all uses of IT resources. What is that means how much use this IT resource, or what is this server? That means what about the this, what is the usage, how many hours I used this server. That means keep track of by the this IT or consumer. Here it is a related to the on-demand characteristics. Here IT resource. Here what about the IT resource service here? That means measures or monitor the billing. The billing, that means what is the billing? Billing in the sense for hour, what is the cost? The cost information. Effective use of IT resource, and then overall prediction of planning. That is a measure usage is not limited to tracking the statistics for the billing purposes. Here that is a measured usage. Finally the resiliency. Here resiliency in the sense, that means so if you take the rubber, the స్థితిస్థాపకత అంటాం మనం. Resilience. Here resilience means in the sense build and bounce back depending on the events on which affect it. Here that means rebuild and then bounce back. Here the type of facility available in a cloud computing, here that is done by using redundant IT resources within a same cloud. Redundant IT resources, for example, if you want to do for x same x, you will take the other component. Here the other component, for example, in human body, two kidneys are there. One kidney fail, automatically functioning, the human functioning done by the other kidney. Yeah, that's why you have a two kidneys are there. That kind of facility available in a cloud computing. Here that means redundant IT resources within a same cloud across the multiple clouds. Here, for example, you have in this diagram here, you have two cloud services are there. If cloud service A and then cloud service, that means cloud B. In the cloud A, I am using the cloud service A. In cloud B, I am using the same cloud service A. That means for this purpose, I am using the two replicated or redundant components. Here, if the component B failed, yeah, why? Because you are using the redundant component here. That means even though there is a failure occur, the system works properly without any delay. That means without any error, the system works properly. That for this purpose here, you are using the redundant. Here, in this case here, the system here is the cloud service A failed. In the B, the cloud B failed. That means the system automatically run with the cloud A. Here, that is the thing, the resilient system in which the cloud B hosts redundant implementation of cloud service A to the cloud provider fail over. Even though fail over in the sense, even though fail, the system functioning automatically. Here, the cloud service and a cloud service become unavailable. Here, that is called here resilience. That is some information. Here tomorrow we will discuss about the different service models. Okay, thank you.